Hi, my name is Junior. That is my mom. 3 years ago, she became pregnant with me. She gave birth to me 2.5 years ago. It's time for her to repeat the cycle, which also means it's time for me to move on. I am not quite ready to move on. So let me tell you how polar bears give birth.
Polar bears are considered solitary animals. However, this is not always true, especially of mother bears. Female polar bears are rarely alone, except for a total of 6 years of their lives. 3 years between 2.5 and 5.5 years of age, and the 6-month periods after mating, which can happen about 5 times over their lifespan. They are either with cubs or mates. Before they find a mate, they begin as a koi, cub of the year. Cubs stay with their mother for 2.5 years. Females can begin to mate at 4.5 years of age, but wait another year or two to have their first litter. At 4.5, they are still a little small, and their scent for attracting a male is weak. The cycle then repeats itself every 3 years. Polar bears are born in December or January. Mature female bears enter into their fertility period during April and May. It is June, and therefore late in the season, but polar bears can still mate, which is happening with this pair. From April to May, polar bears fatten themselves by devouring many ringed seal pups. It just so happens that mature female bears also enter into their fertility period. This is when they typically mate and the eggs are fertilized. Upon arriving in Raud Fjord, the mating pair are already present, so we are unsure how they met. We know adult male polar bears do the locating of females available for breeding. This is accomplished by sniffing tracks during their travels. Adult females have glands in their paws that leave a chemical scent capable of informing an adult male that she is potentially available for breeding. Mothering polar bears are not receptive to mating, so do not exhibit these physiological signals, limiting the number of adult females available for breeding to 1/3 of the population.
Yesterday we had an idea that this young bear was deliberately following that female tracks, whether they knowing that the female was her mother, or simply there were still pheromones in the track and they follow it anyway, because bears like to sniff and they follow all kinds of scents. And that's what happens here. And here,
What do you see when you look at these two bears? First, it seems like the female is not interested in mating. We are 3 months into her fertility period, and she may already be carrying fertilized eggs. Note, having fertilized eggs does not mean she is pregnant. She may not seem interested in mating because it is late in the season and she may need to begin storing energy reserves for the trek inland, as well as building a den, giving birth and feeding during the first 3 months of the koi's life. It's June. The den is built in November to December with snow, in which the mother-to-be will use time and energy to find a location to build the den, which is more inland than the seal population. Are you noticing how short the time frame is from mating to birth? While the polar bear's breathing and heart rate decrease, she does not hibernate. Most polar bear litters are fraternal twins. The cubs grow from 1.5 pounds to 30 pounds in 3 to 4 months during December to March, while the mom is losing weight. After locating a potential female mate, a courting process is required. Remember, mother polar bears are protective and fearful of male bears. Trust needs to be built before copulating can begin. These bears are massive, and the act itself is dangerous to both the female and the male. Building trust is done in small acts of fidelity. After mating ceases, the male and female remain together a little longer before going their separate ways. Although the egg is fertilized, the bear is not pregnant yet. If the egg becomes fertilized, it enters a state of dormancy for several months until August or September, depending on whether the female has sufficient storage of fat to nurture herself and the cub or cubs after giving birth in December until March, when the mom and the cubs leave the den. Yes, female polar bears decide whether they can give birth, and yes, they have a very short pregnancy cycle. For this particular polar bear, her cycle is just beginning because it occurs every 3 years, and we see who we believe to be her 2.5-year-old cub nearby. The female decides how many cubs she can birth by evaluating her fat storage. This means after the egg is fertilized, but before allowing it to grow, she consumes more food for substance before becoming pregnant, which occurs from July to September, which is why June is late for mating. Let's look at the two bears again. Do you notice they appear equal in size? Male bears can be 2 to 3 times the size of a female, so being the same size suggests that this is a young male bear. Polar bears are considered adults when they are old enough to mate. For females, this is ages 4 to 6. For males, 6 to 10.
but look, difference in size. She's closer. Difference in size is you see the frame and behavior. The difference between those two bears we had here was not so big.
Polar bear behavior mating is a sizing up of the male more than being able to fertilize an egg. Remember, every year only 1/3 of the mature female polar bear population is able to get pregnant. Hence, age is the more important factor because age is associated with body size. As such, in this case, the female may be thinking that mating with such a young male will not produce strong cubs, making it more difficult for them to survive the first year. Remaining together after copulating was eye-opening. Traveling to Spitsbergen, a bay 15 miles from Raude Fjord, we re-encounter the mating pair who left Raude Fjord a day or two earlier. Surprisingly, another female bear walked up to the mating pair, such that the male had a chance to mate again. Today was the first time Rinie saw a male with a female and another female walk up to the male. The male may know both females since she just walked up to the pair. The male may have fertilized her eggs earlier in the season. She may be at the end of her cycle, which slightly attracted the male. The situation was unusual, so we can only speculate. Remember, June is late in the season for mating. Moreover, females are afraid of male bears and a bond of trust needs to be built. Since she did not walk up for food, why did she casually stroll up to the male bear, especially one with a mate? To summarize, successful polar bear reproduction is more than simply copulating. Fertilized eggs from spring, April to June, undergo a state of dormancy known as delayed implantation until autumn, October, when the female's body decides whether it has enough fat stored to be able to have cubs. If she does, the fertilized eggs are implanted and grow into cubs, with birth taking place a couple of months later, in about December. If not, and she can't provide for the cubs in the den, the fertile egg miraculously disappears.